My skin is atrocious, but today I'm going to tell you a story. Once upon a time, there was a place called the Blue Blinds Bakery. You could find in the bustling town of Plymouth, Massachusetts, a place that blended in with the many other small restaurants and businesses in their downtown area, where tourists sought cover during rainy 4th of July celebrations, in a town that touts itself as America's hometown. Until one day, the Blue Blinds Bakery closed and the Yellow Deli took its place. But companies rebrand all the time. So why is this significant? Hello everybody, my name is Angie and welcome to my channel where I talk about businesses, books, and beauty. And today we are talking about one of my favorite topics, when cults pose themselves as legitimate businesses. And before we start, I want to make a disclaimer that 1, this video is for entertainment purposes only. 2, everything I say is my opinion, though I will be reading direct quotes from different sources and stuff that will be listed below. And 3, just a general trigger warning. We are talking about a cult, so there's a lot of sensitive topics in this video, like child abuse, sexual abuse, basically any bad thing you can think of. This cult takes the cake, or at least they cover it. So the Yellow Deli is a small food establishment with 29 locations, at least at the time of my research, including the location that's in Massachusetts, which is in Plymouth, Massachusetts. Like any deli, they sell sandwiches is really their main thing, but they have other like baked goods and little things like that. And from the outside, it sort of looks like this cute little deli made by a hippie from the 60s or 70s. And even their logo, like the yellow flower that they have, sort of gives off that good vibes only aesthetic. But I told you this is run by a cult, so obviously it's not good vibes only. Specifically, the Yellow Deli is run by a cult called the 12 Tribes, and they also run other food establishments. Like I said, they originally ran the Blue Blinds Bakery, which was in the same building that the Yellow Deli is in now. And I don't remember them ever officially closing because I am from the South Shore, so I've seen this building before. I walked by it many times. I don't live in the South Shore anymore. Don't go stalking me. But at least people I knew that the Blue Blinds Bakery was run by a cult. So I wonder if that's why they closed down, because word was getting out and they were like, we need to rebrand. I know the Yellow Deli, though, is also known to be run by a cult. So I don't know why they changed to the Yellow Deli, but maybe the change happened like throughout the country. I didn't get that much into it. So according to their website, they opened with a vision that they could open this place, this restaurant, where people could basically just sit down, chill out, relax. Kind of the opposite of the American experience, where you're just go, go, go all the time. And they wanted to, quote, find a place where, quote, people could find a refuge from the pressures of life. And it's, ugh. So I thought first it would be fun. To look at some Google reviews that are for the Yellow Deli, specifically the one in Plymouth. And when I went through them, I sorted them from lowest to highest, because I'm being a little bit biased, but like, it's a cult. It's okay to be biased against a cult, I think. And I'll just read a couple of them for you. One reviewer gave 2 stars and said, "We came to dine in, but we were intercepted at the door with a low-key sales pitch that spooked my wife. So we took our food to go and subsequently researched the 12 Tribes group that built this Yellow Deli and lots of other organizations around the United States. I suppose they are no worse than any other anti-LGBTQ organization, but they do seem intent on recruiting vulnerable young people, which is unfortunate. Research and decide for yourself. We prefer to spend our dining dollars at inclusive and diverse restaurants, so it's not for us. Also worth noting that the food was just okay." Another reviewer gave 3 stars and said, "I agree with the people on here that the food was good, some stuff better than others, of course. The restaurant had an overall nice vibe to it, but the staff was interesting. Whenever they talked to you, it was like they were trying to sell you something, and especially the first time I came here, I was approached and given a strange tour. The people were nice, but it was definitely off-putting, even more so when I learned more on their beliefs. There's another person who apparently is a repeat customer, and they said, I'm somewhat of a Yellow Deli enjoyer and have been to 3 or 4 in my day. The only drawback is the cult thing. I feel like that's a big drawback. Get the deli rose. It's the best thing on the menu, hands down. And so, yeah, it's run by a cult, but like I really like the sandwich. But you know what? Your business is your business, I guess. And then there was like some weird reviews. Somebody said that they thought it was cool that the Yellow Deli was connected to a cult, and that's concerning. I'm hoping they're just a troll. I didn't click on their profile because I was like, I don't want to know more about you, you weirdo. The lighting in here is awful. And I noticed that there seemed to be a discrepancy in the reviews in that it seemed as though all the reviews were either 1 star or 5 stars. They were both at the extreme ends. And I don't know if it's because, all the 1-star people are like, hey, this is a cult, don't go here. And I don't know if the 5-star people actually either A, know that it's a cult and either are part of it and promoting it, because a lot of the people that reviewed it and gave 5 stars were from out of town. I'm like, what if they're out of town cult members? I don't know. Or they may have just genuinely been ignorant to the fact that it was run by a cult, which is totally a possibility. So first, I want you to imagine you've just had a really long day of work. You've just worked, maybe a 10-hour shift on your feet the whole time, serving customers, getting yelled at by customers, your coworkers, whoever, and you just want to go home and relax. But you really can't, because at each Yellow Deli location, there's a cluster of homes. They all live in a commune together, so they might not necessarily live in the same house. It's just a bunch of houses together, like a culty neighborhood. And the thought of living with your coworkers, to me, genuinely insane. But they're not just coworkers, because they're also members of this cult who also work here. By the way, I didn't write this down, but I've heard some rumors about child labor practices in these restaurants, so just know that. I wouldn't be surprised. This is all alleged, but I believe it. So, beyond the fact that they all live in a commune, like a cult, and my friends and I have joked before about living in a commune together, but jokingly and also not in a weird culty way where we only see each other and we work together and we live together and we do everything together, and you have to be monitored like 24/7. But yeah, that's red flag number 1 to me. So besides that, they mentioned on their website that they live a life free from TV and drugs. I get the drug thing for sure, as long as it doesn't apply to like prescription drugs or drugs that are medically needed and your doctor was like, you need to take this. But I sort of have a feeling they don't see doctors that practice Western medicine, but that's just a hunch. But the one thing I do sort of have an issue with is the no TV. Because I do agree that, there's such thing as watching too much TV. And while TV and media can be censored, you still get more opinions and viewpoints by watching different television channels than you would if you were to not ever consume any outside media, aka live in a cult, where what you can access and consume is controlled. So that's a very big thing with cults is, limiting your access to the outside world. And one of the easiest ways to do it is to not let kids watch TV. And so that's just all they know growing up. And to them, this is just how life is. And one thing that really bothers me is that yes, so the media can have biases. Everybody has biases, but they, as in the 12 Tribes cult, and just a lot of these more conservative style cults, they like to go back to, the quote unquote old ways. And, they didn't mention anything about the Constitution on their website. I don't think they did, anyways. Let me go check. Yeah, I don't see anything about the Constitution, but people are always like, freedom of speech, freedom of speech. You know what also is in the First Amendment? Freedom of the press. Freedom of the press, which means journalism, news stations. Obviously, they're biased. Everybody has bias, but you should have access to the facts, because usually these stations, they'll present, well, some stations don't present facts, but generally speaking, they present facts, but the way they present them is all different. And that's how you can sort of use all these different viewpoints to create your own opinion on something, but they don't want you to create your own opinion on something, which is why you cannot watch TV, because you cannot get outside influence because you're in a cult. If you think I'm ranting now, you should see the Word doc I wrote, because that's even more of a rant. So we're gonna stop. So first two things, actually three things. You have to live in a commune, cult, flag number one, but you work in a restaurant. So no, that if you ever go to work somewhere and they're like, you all have to live together, no, run away right then and there. Red flag number two, no TV. I want to say no drugs is red flag number three, because there's a time and place for prescription drugs, or if your doctor recommends something. I get like no heroin and stuff. That makes sense to me. But we're now going to talk a bit more about the specific stuff that I found in the Denver Post articles that I read, because what I just mentioned, those are things: commune, no TV, no drugs, were all mentioned on their website. This stuff that I'm about to mention was not on their website and was brought up in an interview that the journalist did for the Denver Post with a former tribe member. Actually, Denver Post apparently interviewed many tribe members, but we'll get into that, or ex-tribe members. Reviewed nearly 400 pages of their tribe's teachings and other records that were obtained through like real estate and business records and court documents and stuff, because we will get into some legal stuff in a minute. Bradbury actually interviewed 10 members of the cult, ex-members, for 26 hours and reviewed, I believe, the Denver Post as a whole, not just specifically her, by addressing why the 12 tribes is considered a cult. So, they're specifically considered a Christian fundamentalist cult, according to the experts that Bradbury, who is the author of at least one of the articles that I read. And it's a cult because, quote, it has a charismatic authoritarian leader, extremist ideology, an all or nothing belief system, and uses coercion to control and exploit members. So let's first start with this all or nothing belief. And we'll start first with the tamer rules that the Yellow Deli does mention on their website, but they only mention like 2 or 3 rules. They don't mention all the bad ones, which isn't surprising. Any good cult is going to completely cut you off from the outside world, and beyond, the no TV and no drugs that they admit to on their website, they have you, when you enter the cult, get rid of basically everything that you own. By everything, I mean everything, because most of them even change their names so that they have literally no tie to the outside world. And I can only assume this was not mentioned in the article, but I interpret them changing their names to be in this cult as a way to make it harder for family and friends to access them and be able to talk them out of being in a cult. Some some things that the article did briefly mention that were controlled that I'm not going to really get into because the journalist in it, is that they would dictate things like literally how much toilet paper you could use. You could use 2 squares. And if you wanted glasses, they had to be round. Just weird things like that. So the main article I used for a lot of my research was by Shelley Bradbury, like I said, in the Denver Post, and it was originally published in March 2022. Most recently, last I checked, it was updated June 2023. And again, I'll link it in the description box. But in the article, she interviews a man named John I. Post, who lived in the Vermont compound of the 12 Tribes cult, and he escaped at 19 years old, packing only his important documents and possessions, leaving his life behind. And surprise, surprise, another rule of this cult is that you cannot leave this cult. You cannot leave this cult. So he packs up his things. He walks to the entrance, and 15 other cult members apparently formed a wall outside the compound, warning him that if he left this little bubble they were in, that he would be leaving God's protection. And basically, throughout his life, he said that the tribe members are told that you need to be in this cult, in this tribe, in order to be protected by God. If you go into the outside world, you will die. So, if you're told that from a young age, I consider that brainwashing. But all minor stuff when you consider the big problem of basically any cult, unfortunately, is child abuse. It's truly my fault my ring light keeps dying because I bought literally the cheapest one that I could. So we're going to go with natural light now, which is better if I didn't have glasses on, because now you're just going to get a glare for the rest of the video. So unfortunately, a big problem of many cults is child abuse, and the 12 Tribes actually has recently had basically a mass departure because of children that were born into the cult and do not want to raise their kids the way that they were raised. So at least the brainwashing wasn't entirely effective for some people. Fortunately, though, some kids that did grow up in the cult are still there. But so toddlers and children were forced to be quiet and would be physically restrained if they were throwing a tantrum, often being forcefully held down on an adult's lap, and their hands would be held down with them, basically pinned down. Their mouth would be covered, and they'd be screaming, wriggling, trying to get out. But this would sometimes go on for like an hour at a time, because the only time the adult would let go of the child would be once they quote unquote surrendered and the kid stopped kicking and screaming and fighting. And so if you think about that, if you're a kid and you learn that, hey, when I stop putting up a fight, I'll stop being in this position, it teaches you not to fight back with your parents and never question authority. Actually, so this is all very sad, but John Post, who is the guy that was interviewed in that Denver Post article, said that he actually lost hearing as an infant after contracting meningitis, but for years he sustained harsh abuse because his parents didn't realize that he had lost his hearing, and they thought he wasn't listening. And they didn't figure out he was deaf until he was 4. And remember what I said? He lost hearing as an infant. So basically 4 years of even more harsh abuse because they didn't pay attention enough to notice that their son, well, one, I don't even know if they knew that he contracted meningitis. They definitely didn't know he was deaf for 4 years. And apparently it took them 30 years to apologize, and it didn't say if he forgave them, and frankly, I hope he did not. The cult as a whole is basically an advocate for spanking children, and according to the manual, that was released in January 2000, and I don't have access to this document. This is also from the Denver Post article I read. You can spank children as young as 6 months old for things like if they're wriggling away when they're changing the baby's diaper. The baby, wriggles like a baby does. They are encouraged to spank their children, even if the child is not even a year old, not even half a year old, or maybe just exactly half a year old, but that doesn't matter. That's still insane. And obviously, each specific compound is slightly different, but generally speaking, as a whole, the 12 Tribes cult, they encourage their members and really pressure them to physically and harshly discipline children, and on the first offense. So when a kid doesn't listen the first time, which no kid ever is going to, immediately spank them. Apparently they had like wooden rods, and it wasn't a slap, which, I mean, that's not good either, but they tried to make it as bad as they could. And it's kind of in this thing where okay, let's be clear. I have no sympathy for the adults that are fully aware of what they are doing and are in this cult. But it sort of poses an interesting dynamic, because eventually maybe these were good people to begin with, and then somehow nobody joins a cult. You just end up in one, and somehow they got brainwashed and manipulated into doing these things, and they're traumatizing their children for life. So it's sad. And according to one of the articles also, specifically a ex-member of the tribe said that they were probably spanked 20 to 30 times a day for offenses that could be as small as asking for a second helping of breakfast because they were hungry. When described being spanked with a wooden stick, saying it's more humbling than harmful, there is no defense against it. The only way to stop the sting of the rod is to submit. That is exactly what the child would do. Submit to his parents' will and end his rebellion. So this is an example of an authoritarian approach taken by the cult. Again, teaching children from a very young age to not question authority, submit to your parents, submit to your elders. And I said this wasn't just run-of-the-mill spanking, which, again, I don't love that either. But it wasn't spank on the butt. One member recalled a practice called scrounging, in which a child is stripped down naked and beaten head to toe with a rod. Another recalled being locked in a basement for what she believes is more than a day, because they fasted every Friday. And she was, quote, used to starving, and it was a lot longer than that. So it was used to the feeling of starvation that she was already used to. So I imagine a couple of days at least she was trapped. People have been criticizing the 12 tribes for years because of how prevalent child abuse is in the cult. And to no one's surprise, they continuously defend their actions and say they are rooted in biblical practices or biblical principles. And I am not really religious at all. I went to CCD growing up though, and I don't remember any part of the Bible that says strip down your children and beat them naked with a rod until they stop screaming. So beyond the, yes, I don't want to say regular physical abuse, but beyond the physical abuse that I've already mentioned, according to some members, sexual abuse was not allowed, but of course, it did happen, and it is rarely reported, just like in the outside world. And on the occasion that it is reported, again, just like on the outside world, same few things happen. Either A, the child is not believed, B, the child is punished, or C, the child is blamed for the sexual abuse. And people, like the former members of the cult, did say that it was possible that an offender would be kicked out of the cult for sexual abuse, but if they were higher in status and basically depending on their role and position in the tribe, they would often wouldn't leave and would be allowed to stay. Now, while this abuse was going on, the adults sexually abusing children and the cult putting on a front of, hey, we don't allow sex. Again, this just sounds like, I'm not going to get into it. But so eventually coeducation was actually banned because they, forbade sex outside of marriage, despite several former members recalling sexual abuse. And this is disturbing. This whole video is disturbing. But apparently, as a result of banning coeducation, there are enough boys taking part in bestiality that the cult leader found out about it and ordered the boys to kill the animals that they, and the whole thing's just messed up. In 2004, a woman went to the leaders of her tribe because her husband had been sexually abusing her children. And to nobody's surprise, she was denied the divorce that she wanted, and the tribe tried to cover up the abuse. Eventually, she was able to get justice 2 years later after she successfully left the group and went to the authorities, and they arrested her, hopefully now ex-husband. Now I want to just finish off with basically a timeline of troubles with the law that the cult has had. And I believe I'm going in chronological order with this up until most recent one. Let me see. Yeah, the most recent one's in 2020. People have pretty much known about the child abuse since the beginning of this tribe because, unfortunately, it's a common thing in cults. In June 1984, Vermont authorities actually raided the Island Pond commune in Vermont with plans to examine the kids for signs of abuse. And unfortunately, this fell through because a judge said that the search warrant was too general and there was not enough evidence to support the claim of child abuse. So those 100 children that were put into protective custody were then returned to the commune mere hours later after they thought that they were safe and being rescued. So that's really sad. And because cults are sick and twisted, the 12 tribes decided to take June 22nd, remember I said that this incident took place in June, and make it into a holiday for them, celebrating it as a day of deliverance in which God protected them from the overreach of the government. And it's continuously celebrated year after year. And during the 20th anniversary, which I know that wouldn't have been recently. Ooh, time is scary. During the 20th anniversary of the raid, a former public defender, which is interesting, who managed to have gotten sucked into the cult, made a speech telling all of the first generation kids, so the kids that were born into the cult were now young adults, that they needed to say that there had been no abuse during their childhood, which is not true, at least for a good amount of them. Now, in September 2019, authorities were sent to Boulder, Colorado as part of a CPS investigation, and nothing came of this. The deputies reported that the environment was welcoming and the children seemed happy and healthy, and even sang them a song, because that obviously means they're happy and healthy, and definitely doesn't mean that they were told to do that or they'll be punished. I wonder if they were told ahead of time that CPS was coming, because fortunately I don't have experience with this, but based on watching TV shows and stuff, I'm pretty sure they tell you ahead of time when the visit's going to be. So I feel like they were prepared for this, the children. Like the adults told the children what to say, what to do, how to act, and what the consequences would be if they didn't act how they were supposed to. In May 2020, a call was made to Manitou Springs in Colorado, and it was reported that children were being kept in a basement with no electricity. I don't know if you remember earlier, I mentioned a girl who said that that was a punishment that she had once, so we know that it's something that they already do. And the caller was told by police that they knocked on the door and asked a few questions, and everything seemed fine, so they left. And as far as we know, they never went inside the house because it appeared peaceful. Everything looked okay. And get this, police records show that they were at the compound for 13 minutes. How much investigating can you get done for an entire cult in 13 minutes? Now, you can zoom, maybe you can go inside and do like a quick walkthrough, but there's no way that they actually truly investigated and did their job. So for this next thing, I mentioned the Marshall Fire. I did not get into that too much with my research, but basically it's a fire that happened, I believe, in Colorado, and it's believed that the 12 tribes was responsible for the start of the fire, and it was a big one. So a 50-year-old man who had been staying with the 12 tribes was recently arrested on an outstanding warrant for the sexual exploitation of children. Authorities discovered 1,000 images of abuse in his possession. And again, he was staying at the 12 tribes at the time of his arrest, but his original home was burned down in the Marshall Fire. But remember, I said that the Marshall Fire was believed to be caused by the 12 tribes group. So, sounds like a tribe member to me. I didn't do too much research on the Marshall Fire, but basically it was a fire that happened in Colorado, destroyed, I believe, over 1,000 homes. And according to this website that I have, marshallfiremap.com, it wasn't just the most destructive wildfire in the state, but the most documented natural disaster. And what's interesting is you would think that in a cult, they would, I guess not. I was thinking that, maybe as society progresses, they progress a little bit. Like, instead of acting like it's 1680, they act like it's 1710 or something like that. But in 2008, they forbade driving on Sundays, Irish music, and chocolate. And both women and men had to adhere to a stricter dress code that dictated things such as how women can part their hair or how men must roll up their pant legs. And this stemmed from the fact that the wife of the group's founder, or the leader, I don't know where I put this, but I believe it's because the wife of the founder was believed to have had an affair, and she enjoyed things like, Irish music and driving on Sundays, and since she had an affair, they were like, this is the proper punishment. We're going to take this away from everybody. Take away everything she likes. Nobody can do it. But I'm sure she's still dead. She's up there. I don't know if she's dead now. If she's dead now, she's down there. But she was up there on the hierarchy in the cult. And it sort of seemed like this woman was the leader of the group because a former member actually said that he met one-on-one with Eugene Spriggs, who was the founder of the cult, and when this member was a teenager, and discussed the childhood abuse that he went through. And apparently Spriggs, started like silently crying and stuff and seemed to be empathetic until the wife burst into the room mid-conversation, sent the member away, and then threatened him, obviously. Because why wouldn't she? I feel like this video is not as organized as I had it on paper. It's basically more of just, I guess, a timeline of major events that have happened in the cults. This is totally out of order. I'm going to pop it back in. I forgot, I think actually one of the reasons that the Plymouth location got rid of the Blue Blinds Bakery and changed it to the Yellow Deli is because there was a Facebook post. So this quote is from Boston Magazine that apparently this was, again, the bakery's Facebook post. So the actual business's Facebook post too, which not that makes it okay. Or it's still bad whether it's the personal one or the business one, but I think it's wild to do it on the business account. It's still wild to do it on your personal account, but you know what I mean. As, quote, as promised, let's talk about the blacks. One from Thursday reads, one of the most frequent questions we get is, are you racist? The answer is no. But we do believe that slavery is necessary. There's a difference. I feel like, and since, like I said, they are known for child abuse, as is basically any cult. So there were articles, again, that besides the Denver Post, some from the Daily Mail, which I don't really trust, and according to Boston Magazine, also from Pacific Standard Magazine, that details more of the allegations of child abuse in the 12 tribes. And the Blue Blinds Bakery then posted, well, we cannot say that what's written there is incorrect, as in you can't say that the articles that say that you abuse children are incorrect. People erroneously think it means we abuse our children. This is wrong. Is it? Because you just said that what's written in the articles is not incorrect. Our children love discipline. They crave it. Just like, I can't even say this out loud. Oh, it's really just like the blacks crave subservience to Shem and Japheth. See previous post. I don't know who Shem and Japheth are, to be honest. I don't think I want to either, because obviously it's clearly a racist post. And something that's also kind of wild to me is usually when a brand gets caught for saying something racist, they blame it on the intern, which we know that's not, it's not true. The intern didn't do it. But the Blue Blinds Bakery really doubled down on their beliefs that slavery is necessary. And so this journalist for Boston Magazine apparently messaged the bakery's Facebook page to ask how the bakery thought people would react to the apparent endorsement of slavery. And the owner basically responded, yeah, I know it might be unpopular, but like we're not stupid. We knew it would be unpopular, but we thought that, you know, some people in our community would agree with us and accept it. Girl. And then the journalist asked if the page was an imposter, almost basically giving them an out instead of, you know, the intern in it. It says, oh, did somebody hack into your account? Did somebody create a fake account? Nope. I said, this is the real page. Specifically, quote, this is the real page. I set it up while working at the bakery many years ago. I was born into the 12 tribes, which owns the bakery, and from a very young age disagreed with many of the beliefs they had, among them that slavery was necessary and that all people outside of the community were going to hell. So if you disagreed with the belief that slavery was necessary, why are you making Facebook posts that slavery is necessary? What is sort of confusing about this article from Boston Magazine is, like I said, the Facebook page is like, yeah, we're the real page. But then apparently there was another Facebook page for Blue Blinds Bakery titled Blue Blinds Bakery -Real that, according to this article, described itself as a, quote, alternative to the fraudulent one. And supposedly the quote-unquote real one eventually became aware of the post from the supposed fake one and have since been in contact with the police regarding this matter. This was in 2016, so I assume it's been resolved by now. This was just a last minute article that I'm reading as I'm talking about it. But comment down below, do you think the slavery posts were from the real business page? Because I do. I think it was from the real page. I think they're lying. And they got caught in the act and they doubled down and they were like, oh crap, we shouldn't have doubled down because we realized not even the people in our community supported us, so let's back out of this. So now that I've rambled on for I don't know how long, I'm still new to these videos, but this topic was interesting to me, and it's unfortunate that this cult still exists, and not only they exist, but they operate a business, a legit business that people don't know is run by a cult that practices child abuse, sexual abuse, slavery apparently, because the people that work there don't get paid. It's just part of their like lifestyle. It's yikes. If I get any more information that I find that's interesting, I can leave it linked down below. And you know, maybe one day I'll come back and do an updated video that isn't as terrible as this one. And maybe one day the tribe won't exist anymore, and that would be nice. So if you enjoy this video, you could like it and you could subscribe if you wanted to, but you don't have to. Yeah, I don't know how I'm supposed to stop these videos. Bye. Peace out. See you later.